As important as the credentials and training of Dr., shall we say, Northam, maybe during an unprecedented public health crisis, especially since he has often touted his medical training to endorse his policy pronouncements on the pandemic, in addition, in ridicule of the president. It is of equal importance to note that his conferring second opinion for the chief medical officer, upon whom he has relied throughout this public health threat of unprecedented proportion, that has claimed the lives of over 5,000 Virginians, with over half represented by the elderly in nursing homes, a known risk from the very onset of the public health crisis, closed permanently as many as 1 in 5 Christian churches, resulted in as many as 1 in 5 Christians to completely abandon devotional worship until the pandemic crisis has finally been resolved, disrupted public and private education, closed libraries, caused record-breaking unemployment, and the permanent closing of almost half of all minority-owned businesses, was appointed based upon his desire to appear inclusive and diverse, but without any concerns at all about his adequate preparation, selecting Mohammed Norman Oliver, a medical doctor who has purposefully engaged in concealing for many years both his first name as well as the identity of the undergraduate degree conferring institution from which he earned his baccalaureate degree and training, Excelsior University, a self-accrediting college in New York State, and their college system that requires absolutely no college entrance exam. Certainly, one would assume that in such a progressive state as the Commonwealth of Virginia, where all are colorblind, except for those, of course, who voted for the current president, if a person of color had to be selected for such an important position, one might be found somewhere with far more superior credentials. But such is not the case, apparently, and upon present evidence. Not uncommon among such token positions, Dr. Mohammed, or shall we say the norm, has become an advocate for disparities in medicine and claimed these standardized tests are racist, promoting the notions of critical race theory, a proposition readily vulnerable to criticism by his less than illustrious example of excellence. So now, having been introduced to our less than reputable medical experts, let us now to examine the case in chief, thinking like a lawyer as one would be required in a court of law, or at least as we are taught in law schools. As a preliminary matter, it is of note that, practically mirroring the federal rules of evidence, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, hearsay is a statement other than one made by the declarant while testifying at the trial or hearing, offered in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted. The truth of the matter asserted, a phrase you will often hear in law. A proposition stated also expressly in Virginia Supreme Court Rule 2.801C, or Charlie. For comparative purposes, under Federal Rule of Evidence 801C, hearsay means a statement that one, the declarant does not make while testifying at the current trial or hearing, and two, a party offers in evidence to prove, say again, the truth of the matter asserted in the statement. So this is to state that what I am rendering here in public testimony are those empirical facts that I have personally experienced and or witnessed, and not something about which I heard or read or saw on a YouTube video or was told to say by some other person or entity or special interest. Are we clear? In law school, you would be required to state the facts of the case, and this is a concise review of the relevant facts. So dispensing with that preliminary requirement, if you are engaged in the practice of law, prayerfully engaged in such employment as an actual litigator, a challenge that surprisingly many avoid, one of the next required steps in this systematic analysis is to perform some legal research to ascertain the controlling law, for which just over the summer, the U.S. Supreme Court propitiously provided a precedent in settled law in the well-publicized DACA case, applauded even on social media by Governor Ralph Northam at his COVID-19 update pertaining to minority infections that had run rampant, and surrounded by an entourage of loyal and dedicated Democrat Party leaders and progressive activists in the county of Fairfax. In the case of Department of Homeland Security, the Regents of the University of California, that judicial review of agency action is limited to the grounds that the agency invoked when it took the action. Applause. All that which was known at the time on March 17th for the purposes of argument when the sweeping lockdown order regime and COVID-19 response officially with great fanfare began. Well, according to the March 17th order, the two leading physicians in the state had endorsed the whereas statement that they had conclusively determined that COVID-19 spreads from person to person, transmitted via respiratory droplets, and can be spread from an infected person who does not have symptoms to another person. According to their recent FOIA reply, they have admitted that their sole authority for this determination was the guidance of the Centers for Disease Control. And in a hearing on a motion for a temporary restraining order that was held on April 15th, with all defendants, including the governor and his chief medical officer in absentia, as well as the mayor for the city of Alexandria, having failed to enter an appearance, the circuit court reiterated verbatim the guidance upon which the governor and his chief medical officer had relied from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. But as this matter turns upon the examination of the exact words of the nation's leading infectious disease control experts, which is actually not Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Allergy and Infectious Disease Agency, or NIAID, but rather Dr. Robert Redfield, a name you rarely hear in the news as an appointee of the president, who specifically included a conditional phrase before that which Drs. Northam and Oliver declared as an indisputable fact, as he stated actually very cautiously at that time, as reflected even in the dismissal order by the Alexandria Circuit Court in the motion for temporary restraining order, that the virus is thought to be spread by the means by which Drs. Northam and Oliver apparently simply believed, based upon no apparent evidence, was the established medical fact. How did they make this determination? There is very little evidence in any record except the official announcement made by Dr. Oliver on February 7th, as reflected in the lockdown order on March 17th and recently provided to us in a response to a FOIA. As stated by the Supreme Court in the case against General Aaron Burr for treason in 1807, if the gentleman had believed this decision to be favorable to him, we would have heard of it in the beginning of his argument. For the path of inquiry in which he was led him directly to it. Interpreting the American Constitution, he would have preferred no authority to that of the Supreme Court of the country. Yes, sir, he would have immediately seized this decision with avidity. He would have set it before you in every possible light. He would have illustrated it. He would have adorned it. You would have seen it under the actions of his genius appear with all the varying grandeur of our mountains in the morning sun. He would not have relinquished it for the common law, nor have deserted a rock so broad and solid to walk upon the waves of the Atlantic. But he knew that this decision closed against him completely the very point for which he was laboring. Hence it was a decision was kept so sedulously out of view until from the excluded materials of the common law he thought he had reared a Gothic edifice, so huge and so dark as quite to overshadow and eclipse it. Let us bring it from this obscurity into the face of day. We who are seeking truth and not victory, whether right or wrong, have no reason to turn our eyes from any source of light which presents itself, and least of all from a source so high and so respectable as the decision of the Supreme Court of the United States. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Christian, every conservative, every Republican, every Democrat, every liberal, every conservative, and every Virginian and American true to like the motto of the imagery, follow me and we shall overcome. Honest. And y'all will come back now. Yeah.
And you are a keeper. You are a leader. Won't you show me the way? Oh, you're a mountain from which there flows a fountain. So let its water wash my sins away. 'Cause I am a seeker and you are a keeper. You are a teacher, won't you teach me the way? Reach out and lead.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
Keep me in the shelter of your care each day. 'Cause I am a seeker and you are a keeper. You are a leader, won't you show me the way?